My name is James Ashcroft, and I'm the director, co-writer, executive producer of The Rule of Jenny Penn. The Rule of Jenny Penn is about a high-ranking judge who he suffers a debilitating stroke and he's put in rest home care. He thinks it's going to be short-lived, and he's very reluctant to engage with the community, especially his roommate, who's a former rugby player for New Zealand. And he discovers that there's another character, another resident, who is feigning dementia symptoms and is actually covertly abusing other residents in the home.
The first time I was really excited about doing it was when I Zoomed with James Ashcroft.
The level of invention and consummate skill for knowing what his syntax, what his language of film could be was pretty mind-blowing. It's one of the most impeccably detailed screenplays I've ever read, I think. Eli and James, as co-writers, they paint pictures with their stage directions. They settled into imagery, some of which I think may be transcripts from the short story that Owen Marshall wrote.
You know, Owen's, he's one of our literary titans in New Zealand. And so I knew a bit of his work, but it was sort of his two ventures out into the really dark stuff that I found really interesting. And the best thing about Owen was that he was just so open to his material, giving it over, trusting you with what you want to do with it, what you want to say with it.
I certainly appreciated what a terrific piece of storytelling it was. It just simply scared me so much. It was a script to definitely challenge an actor. Your first impression is, oh my God, I can't do this. It's too unsettling, it's too troubling. If it upsets me just reading it, it's going to so upset an audience. But I've learned in my career that the things that scare you are the things you should have the courage to do. It's a film about cruelty and bullying and power. And it's just in the very, very unlikely setting of an old people's home.
There was a certain immediacy there, but then being in an aged care facility is really only a metaphor for living a life anywhere. And that appealed to me so very much.
You're not accustomed to entering into that world in a movie. Certainly not seeing the tensions of a psychological suspense drama. That's what makes it extraordinary and unique in so many ways. They've created these characters, and their interactions are stories that we may have seen before, but never with the added layer of age and loss of viability and mortality just sort of hanging over them.
And of course, well, that's all part of what the character's all about, suddenly realizing you're going into this old age thing. But it's lovely thinking to myself, no, I've seen all that, and now I'm going down that road. So I see why these characters work and they get so interesting for people.
It's more Ivan the Terrible than it is aged care facility in the suburbs of some New Zealand town, because it is about power structures, that go horribly, horribly wrong.
To me, there's three leads. There's no, it's not John and Jeffrey, and then the New Zealand cast. Like George completely holds his own with these two titans.
I knew of George because he'd done a lot of theatre in Melbourne, where I live, and I'd invited James and George to have dinner one night when they were both in Melbourne, and it was great to meet up, and we had Venn diagram overlaps between New Zealand people I've worked with and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of our stuff was together. We shared the same room. We didn't have any lines to start off with. We were just sort of getting to know each other and getting to abuse each other. But this is what the character's really about, just getting, but it was so lovely to work with.
John and Jeffrey were, the big influences on Eli and I. They were always in the DNA of the script. The great thing with them, I mean, they've got more energy than most 20-year-old actors, and the level of, flexibility that they're able to have in approaching, trying different things, and their fearlessness has just meant that we had so many options with every scene. They've spoiled actors for me. Or they've set the bar very high.
He and I got on at a house on fire. So I contacted him. There was, because of the strike, if the strike broke and he had to go back to work, then he was obliged to fulfill his contract. So it was very touch and go. And I was hoping he was going to be doing it, because it just, sometimes people land on the roles that they have to play and should play and that nobody else should play.
Well, finally, we got good assurance this strike is going to take forever. There's time to do this movie. And so, literally, with only about 3 weeks to spare, I was in.
I said, why don't I pop into LA on the way back, and we'll just spend a couple of days breaking the back of it.
And he stopped over in LA, and he and I spent 2 days together just going through the script.
It just all, it started to, we light the blue touch paper and stand well back and see what the fireworks are like. And then that's kind of been the working rapport in Wellington and in Taupo, where we went to shoot on the location of what was a tourist resort, but served very well as an aged care facility.
We made such a community of people, and geographically, we stayed at this resort. All of our settings were in this little campus. There are maybe 80 different units. Well, the cast and crew were housed in the units. You would get out of basically your hotel room and walk down the stairs, and there was a scene being shot in the downstairs hallway. I would even go back to my room to rest in between shots. This is unheard of on a film.
It was like a little bit of a boot camp in many ways, but it allowed for a greater level of engagement and intimacy amongst the cast and the crew too. That's, for me, has always come from, that tradition of wānanga, of removing yourself from a place, being together and immersed in that environment, which allows you to focus and sort of, unpack, compare, contrast, work the problem, work the challenges, work the questions. This is a story fundamentally about tyranny, and I think this is a great time to be telling stories about tyranny. But what's really insidious, I think, about this story, and really frightening, is that again and again and again we see in the real world the worst kind of tyranny always involves the most vulnerable people. And that level of oppression there, it was the stark contrast between the themes and the setting, the location, which really excites me about this particular story and our take. So it's a David and Goliath story set in a rest care facility.